There's a myth going round town that when you get older you just sit down and start rocking, just rocking. In a way that's true, if you know what I mean. Just take a look at the senior scene. Well, it's rockin'.
Our illustrious panel to join us this evening and talk about the documents we need to put together so that our end-of-life experience matches what we want to have happen. What we've noticed is that there is an enormous inertia. All of us know that we should have these documents in place. There's an enormous inertia in actually doing it. Maybe it's the bewildering complexity of trying to figure out every single possibility that we might be confronted with and getting how we want that resolved down on paper. Maybe it's the challenge of engaging our family members to participate and to be aware of what we are doing. Maybe it's the perplexing task of making sure that if we put all these words into documents, that these documents are at the right place at the right time so that they actually can control what happens. This afternoon, our panelists are going to help reduce our fears and uncertainty. Right. And several weeks from now, we will have a workshop where we will have notary public and the 5 wishes forms and some people that will help us work through filling out the forms if this session doesn't actually push you over the brink and get your pen moving. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists this evening. Immediate left, your right is Shannon Pointer, a face you should all recognize from Project Engage educational series on the 5 wishes document. She is a community educator for the Hospice and Palliative Care Center of Alamance Caswell. This is a non-profit hospice and home health agency serving Alamance, Caswell, and Orange County, and cares for those with serious illnesses to help assure that they live as fully and comfortably as possible. Ms. Pointer is a certified nurse educator holding a master's degree in nursing focused on nursing systems, community, and public health. Next to her is Dr. Beth Rosenerg, also a familiar face, as she has been quite involved in most of the Project Engage end-of-life events. Dr. Rosenberg recently retired from her 20 years of private practice in cardiology and now serves as primary care physician for a small panel of underserved elderly individuals with complex medical profiles, as well as serving as the house cardiologist for the PACE programs in Burlington and Pittsburgh both. PACE, of course, is the program of all-inclusive care for the elderly, and it is administered by Piedmont Health Services. Dr. Rosenberg is board certified in both internal medicine and cardiology and holds both a doctorate in exercise physiology from West Virginia University and an MD from the Medical College of Pennsylvania. Far left is Attorney Colin Austin. He is becoming a familiar face. After spending over 20 years working with the government agencies and nonprofit organizations to increase the financial stability for individuals and families, Attorney Austin now practices estate planning and elder law in his own law firm in Hillsborough. Additionally, he serves on the Aging Advisory Board of the Orange County Department of Aging. Attorney Austin is a graduate of Duke University School of Law. And we will begin with Shannon Pointer.
Okay, wow, what a turnout. So exciting that everyone is here because you're so ready to have the conversation. Isn't it time we talk? Yes, absolutely it is. And I'm going to start with something, hopefully this will stick in your mind. What do I wish for today for you, okay? The W in wish. First thing, I want you to think within about what's important to you. That's number one. How can we tell somebody else what's important to us if we don't truly understand inside what we want and what we don't want? And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about healthcare, but I'm talking about everything. Having conversation right now, while you can, is the best gift of all. Because we don't know when we leave those doors, will we get to the end of the intersection, right? Will we be able to speak our preferences? So it's very important to think within. The I is for implement, okay? So once we think within about what's important, we need to do something with that. I use an example. If we were going to all take a trip today, would we ask for a confirmation number from our hotel, or would we just say, they'll have a room for me? I'm not worried about that. I don't need a confirmation email. No, right? We want that, right? If we book a florist or a photographer, we do a contract. We should not think any different about our healthcare planning. Planning for care in advance, right, means putting things in writing, implement an advanced care directive, okay? Then the S is for share and store. So we don't want to do these things and then not have conversation about them, right? So we want to share our preferences with important people, our VIPs. Think about who your VIPs are, okay? Your healthcare power of attorney, your agent who's going to speak for you, your doctor, okay? So that they understand your wishes, right? So we're going to share, and then we're going to store appropriately. We're not going to go put these things in a lockbox so nobody can get a hold of them, right? No, we want to put them in a place that they're easily accessible so that your wishes can be honored, and that's where the H comes in. Why are we doing it? So that hopefully your wishes will be honored. So how do we go about this? Well, the state has wonderful forms, and we're not focusing on those today, but we can implement two things. A healthcare power of attorney and a living will, okay? And we're talking about things that inform about our wishes. Then we're going to talk about other documents that instruct providers on what to do and not to do, okay? So when we're informing, we have a living will and a healthcare power of attorney. Now, a healthcare power of attorney is naming our agent. If I had my slideshow up now, you would see a secret agent man. He's got glasses on. He's ready to be assertive and express exactly what I would want if I couldn't speak for myself. So who's that person going to be for you? How do you decide? It's not something to take lightly, and it's definitely not something that you want to do and not have conversation with the person, right? Do you think that ever happens where somebody finds out, oh, guess what? You're the healthcare power of attorney. No, we don't want that, right? It's all about the conversation. So your healthcare power of attorney is going to speak on your behalf when you're not able to, right? When you lack capacity to make your decisions. So it's not that they can automatically do anything, right? That's important to understand. Your healthcare power of attorney is going to express your wishes when you cannot express them yourself. Your living will is another type of advanced care planning document where you're expressing whether or not you would want life-prolonging measures. That can only go into effect in 3 situations, okay? That you have an incurable or irreversible condition that would result in your death within a relatively short period of time. Some may remember back years ago they referred to it as a persistent vegetative state. That you're unconscious, you're not likely to regain consciousness. That you have advanced dementia, and it's very likely that you're not going to recover from this. So these are very bad situations where you're stating whether or not you would want life-prolonging measures. So those are the 2 main components of advanced care planning, or as I like to say, planning for care in advance, right? So the North Carolina Secretary of State website has statutory forms that are more legal forms of these 2 documents. People can access those, they can complete those if they want to. We're going to focus on 5 wishes today because 5 wishes is a more holistic form of advanced care planning. Okay? Jim Toey was a part of this, and he was in a hospice that Mother Teresa ran. Okay? He said, you know what? Advanced care planning isn't holistic enough. There's so much more to life than just the 2 documents, right? So you all have a copy, or do you have a copy? Okay. So let's just open this up really quick. So one of the first things you'll notice that's nice, and I know the other panelists will will agree with me. You do have to be cautious about completing documents where you live because will they be honored? It depends on if they meet the letter of the law of the state that you're in. So that's very important. Where 5 wishes actually is honored in 42 states and the District of Columbia. You'll see that on page 3. So you do have some assurance that it would meet the letter of the law in those states. 5 wishes document starts with wish 1. And wish 1 is on page 4. That's your healthcare agent, your healthcare power of attorney. Okay, so that's the portion of 5 wishes that covers the healthcare power of attorney. You will see that there are statements here. You can mark out those statements. You also have the ability to add in information that's important to you. When you're naming your agent, you're naming one person, right?
No.
And an alternate, right? The more people we name, the more we could have what? And what if you leave from here and somebody says, oh, I'm not worried about that at all. I have 5 children. They all get along just fine. Everything's going to be just fine and dandy. Taking a risk, right? Because we're talking about majority, right? And if the majority don't agree, then we can have problems. And most families say they wouldn't want to be a burden, right, to their family members, yet not completing these documents sometimes can create some problems. So we're naming a person. If that person can't be found, not reasonably available, then we're naming an alternate. Now, who can be your agent? The 5 Wishes does a great job of teaching you as you walk this. So it talks to you on page 4 about picking the right person to be your agent. It lists some people that it can't be. It can't be your healthcare provider, an employee or a spouse of an employee of your healthcare provider. And it can't be a person serving as an agent or proxy for 10 or more people unless he or she is your spouse or close relative. I have to laugh every time I read that because I think, wow, I wouldn't want to have to be serving for that many people. But yes, so it does a great job of teaching you as you walk this document. Now, Wish 2 is your living will. You have several statements on page 7 that include those statements where a living will can go into effect. You have being close to death, an elaboration of what that means, and then whether or not you would want to have life support treatment, you would not want it, or maybe you say that I would want my doctor to start it if they believe it would help, but then I want them to stop giving me life support treatment if it's not helping with my conditions or symptoms. So you have the ability to check the one that's right for you. You also have the ability to do that if you were in a coma and not expected to wake up or recover, or if you have permanent severe brain damage and not expected to recover. So a lot of folks like the 5 Wishes because it does give a little more elaboration and it's just a little bit more friendly, I think, and holistic in its approach. And again, you can see each one allows you to have places to elaborate. Wishes 3, 4, and 5, they're awesome because that's addressing not just physical, but holistic, right? Spiritual, emotional. There's a lot more to the conversations that need to be had than just naming your agent and whether or not you would want life prolonging measures. What about important things to you related to memorial services? Preferences about whether you want to be buried or cremated. There's a lot more to be discussed. So the 5 Wishes allows for that. Again, if you, like Wish 3, how comfortable do you want to be? Wish 4, my wish for how I want people to treat me. And then Wish 5, which is one of my favorites, is more about how you want to be remembered. Important things about memorial services. And I had a student ask me just recently teaching on this document. She said, are they going to, is the physician going to read this and say these things out loud? I wish to be massaged with warm oils as often as I can be. She asked me this. I said, you know what? You're exactly right. I said, it's all about the conversation. Read through the things that are important. Talk with your agent. Make sure that they have a good understanding of things that provide comfort to you, things that don't provide comfort to you. So it's all about the conversation. And then you'll see on page 10, in North Carolina, we require a notary and 2 witnesses to have a legal document. Okay, to have a legal advance directive, living will, healthcare power of attorney, this has to be in place. Same thing for 5 Wishes. So that's why on the subsequent date, we will have notary public available and you can complete it to make it legal, right? So we have it official And that's why that section is there. Not every state has the same rules and regulations, right? So you would want to check, especially if you travel a lot, make sure that it's in one of the 42 states that it's honored. Or if you complete other documents, that you make sure you're meeting the letter of the law where you are. And then sharing. There's a spot that you have the ability to put like a wallet card into your wallet saying that you've completed this document. But again, the most important is who's going to get that phone call. If you left here today, something happened, you're in the hospital, they're going to look for next of kin or whoever's named the healthcare power of attorney. It's very important that that person know you, know your wishes. There are two other documents I'm going to talk about briefly, DNR and Most. And how are they different? I think you guys have some sample ones. DNR, do not resuscitate. Right? If my heart stops beating, if my lungs stop breathing, I do not want you to attempt CPR on me. Okay? They are this color for a reason. They have to be the original document. Okay? You cannot make copies of this. It won't be honored. Okay? Where do you hear folks putting these? What have you heard in the community about where they, grid, right? It's because they want to make sure they can easily access. This is a very powerful document, and only a provider can sign this. But this is saying, I don't want anything done, and right, we have to have the real deal. Okay? So the Most form is the medical orders for scope of treatment. Okay? So it is also a medical order. Now, what are these two doing, and how are they different from your advance directive? Your advance directive, your healthcare power of attorney, live and will, right? You're giving information. You're informing people. With these two, you're instructing. Okay? Provider, medical physician, provider, sign documents where you're instructing on what you want done and not done. Now, the Most is pretty awesome because it gives you the ability to elaborate a little bit more on what you want and what you don't want. So let's look at it just real briefly here. Section A, on the Most, you have the ability to say whether or not you would want CPR. Section B talks about medical interventions. So do you want the full scope of treatment, or do you just want comfort measures? Okay, this is an individualized form based on a person's goals for their care. So it does require conversation, right? I see a theme here. We've got to have conversation about what's important. For a provider to help someone decide if a Most is right for them or their loved one, there has to be conversation about what these things mean, okay, and what the goals of their care are. Section C includes antibiotics and decisions related to antibiotics if indicated. No antibiotics, so you see how you're able to express a little bit more detail. Then Section D talks about medically administered fluids and nutrition, so IV fluids and feeding tubes. And then Section E, who is this discussed with? Who agreed on this plan? And then you have the physician's signature. One thing that's different in these two is that the Most requires the patient or the patient's representative's signature, where the DNR is just signed by the provider. One barrier to the Most in the past was that it had to be updated annually. Well, guess what? Not necessarily anymore. So now, if you look at the back of your sheet, if you have the back on you, it talks about completion of the Most, and then it talks about reviewing the Most form. So it gives you recommendations on when the Most form should be reviewed. But it's typically, if there's any kind of admission or discharge from a healthcare facility, or there's been any change, or if the patient's preferences change. So that's a good thing, that now there's a little more flexibility in that. So you can imagine if you were an emergency services person, okay, and you were arriving on the scene and you had the choice of one of these. Which one do you think EMS likes the best?
DNR.
They actually really like the Most, wouldn't you agree? Because it gives them more guidance on the types of care that the person wanted. So a lot of EMS personnel I've talked to really like the Most because they feel like they have a little bit more guidance. But it requires more conversation. And you do not have to wait for the provider to bring this conversation up. You can bring it up. I want you to be an advocate for your own health. I want you to go in and I want you to say, you know what, let's talk about what's important to me right now while I can. I want you to know me. I want you to know me so well like the back of my hand that you won't have one doubt if something happens to me that you'll know what was important and what peace of mind that can give you, can give your family. I'm young. I'm almost 40. And I completed a document. My husband has completed a document. If you go back and look at landmark cases, they're young, aren't they? They're young, right? Anybody, anything can happen at any time. I will tell you just real briefly, my husband is a North Carolina State Highway Patrolman, and he had a traumatic brain injury from a rollover. So I got the experience of the trooper coming to the house saying, I'm going to take you to the hospital. Your husband's, he's going to be fine. Okay, so I'm a nurse. He's going to be fine. Well, how did he get to the hospital? Oh, they flew him. Okay, let's go really fast. So I get to the emergency room, and he's repeating the same phrases over and over and over. And I asked the doctor, I said, do you think he's going to ever stop doing this? So I got to experience what it would have felt like. What if he had not stopped repeating those same things? What if he couldn't remember? But about 4 the next morning, as the doctor said, the tape recorder started back taping and life was back to normal. So I got the chance to ask some things that I hadn't really asked before. What would I have done if this had been different? So I'm happy to say we have completed our documents and we talk about things very often. And include even our daughter in the discussion, who's 13. I don't think, it's anything wrong with having conversation about what's important to you while you can. So that hopefully will motivate you to put pen to paper, as she said, put some things in place. And I think I'll turn it over.
I have to be honest, as a physician, my emphasis is generally on the what they call goldenrod, which is also bright yellow, and bright pink forms. I have had a number of patients who come in with the 5 wishes, and I'm always happy to review them with them and make sure that I have a copy in the chart. And I think that's important because I want to know them, as Shannon said, like the back of their hand. I want to know their wishes.
There's a myth going round town that when you get older you just sit down and start rocking. Just rockin' in a way that's true, if you know what I mean. Just take a look at the senior scene. Well, it's rockin'. Yeah, it's rockin'. We're pulling our weight, learning the code, clicking our heels, sharing the load, and every so often we're hitting the road.